everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Speaking Legally, where the cultural meets the legal, sponsored by Destiny Designers University. My name is Dr. Stacey N.C. Grant. Welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in each and every week, for sharing this out with those who you feel will benefit from the information. And I'd like to just get started with our co-host saying hello to you. We're going to kick it off with Ed Pichardo.
Hello, my name is Ed Pichardo. Thank you for viewing our show. I hope you find it informative and helpful. I'm a Dominican-American solo practitioner, and hablamos español, so if you ever need any services, please let us know. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Ed, and over to you, Royce.
All right, welcome to our first-time listeners. Hopefully you become a long-time viewer and listener, and welcome to everyone that has listened to us before. I believe we're on episode 7, so that's 7 Wednesdays have gone by where we've tried to provide our community or the community with information that revolves around or involves the legal and the cultural. And today we're going to keep on in that path. And so I think, Ed, you want to start off with something from the cultural aspect, making sure we pay homage to our ancestors during this time, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Here is definitely a merger of the legal and the cultural. And on the cultural end, recently we've lost a number of cultural icons, and I want to just to give them shout outs and speak their names, with respect to that. One of them is Jimmy Cobb. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him. He was the last surviving member of the Miles Davis Sextet. He was the drummer. And this was the group that actually produced a beautiful album called Kind of Blue in 1959, wonderful jazz album. We also lost Little Richard. I'm sure most of you are familiar with him, cultural icon, rock and roll legend. We also had Betty Wright, R&B legend, also known as the Cleanup Woman, had a beautiful record in the 70s, I believe, 70s, 80s, wonderful. And then you have the great Andre Harrell, Uptown Records, mentored to Sean Puffy Combs, led to the beginning of a number of beautiful hip hop acts that, are fond in our memories. And so, one of them being Heavy D, who passed away some time ago. So enough respect to him and peaceful journey to all these cultural icons.
And I just want to make sure we add, even though, in some respects, not in the same genre of all the people that you named. However, we would be remiss if we didn't pay all due respects for George Floyd and his family and his passing, and in the way of struggling for equal rights, in the way of being an example for those to live and to see how America views us. And it is an American issue because it's not a New York State issue. It's not a New Jersey issue. It is Minnesota. It is New Orleans. It's Utah. It's Atlanta. It's all of the states. I just my condolences to the family. And as we share our thoughts on that in this episode, I just wanted to make sure that we get a chance to say that because, time does fly. And next thing you know, we're talking about issues after issue. I'm sorry to interject, Dr. Grant. Did you have something you wanted to say?
It's fine. This is going to be a full show, and I think it's fitting that we did start with a tribute culturally to those icons that we did lose. And it's a heavy show because there's a lot going on that has happened just since we had our last episode. And unfortunately, this is the world that we're living in, and the issues that we're going to discuss today. It gives me pause, as we think about what we're witnessing in 2020. I've seen so many images and posts going on, but it's just sad that we're at this point. And literally, I am almost at a loss for words. Anyone that knows me knows that's very rare. But how many times are we going to be here? And that's why speaking legally is so important, and having the cultural meet the legal, that we can talk about these issues in real time, that you have the book Cardiac Arrest that addresses a lot of what we're seeing happening on the street, Ed, that you can make sure that our Latino brothers and sisters understand what's going on, that we have access to information, and we're not out here just upset and emotional, but we can take the information and do something with utilizing this government system of the legal and how that impacts our communities so that we can get justice. So let's jump right into it. And I'm going to pull up something while we queue up what happened in Central Park this week.
Well, I want to make sure that Ed and I stay on track, and I'm glad that you are here, Dr. Grant, with us to make sure that we stay on track as to what we're providing. What we're trying to provide here is a conversation about the legal and about the cultural. And there's going to be many people that are going to speak about the outrage that took place in Central Park. And they're going to speak from a different angle, maybe an advocacy, maybe a racism, maybe a gender, something of that vernacular. But here, on Speaking Legally, we want to make sure that there's continuity in what we said prior to and now. And so here's the connect. Episode 6, we talked about this phenomenon called excited utterance, right? Where you can move and prosecute a case in a domestic violence scenario without actually having a victim. And we talked about how that can happen. The alleged victim could call 911, whether it's male or female, call 911, make a variety of statements that is in the moment, and then later on in time decide that they do not want to go forward. And what happens with that is that the prosecutor can then decide that they still want to go forward, and they're able to use those statements in real time as the catalyst to go forward, to move forward, to prosecute you. So I'm saying all that. How does it relate to Central Park? Here we had a situation where this person, this woman, racist and all, prejudice and all, everything that you want to wrap up in all, made a phone call to 911. And in that phone call, although we know it was fiction, although we know we can see it's fiction, how she described what was going on, the tone of her voice, the anxiety, the excitement, had everyone that was listening to that call, who did not see social media, but was listening to that call, thinking and possibly thinking that that was happening in real time. Hence, an arrest could be made. Hence, if this woman decides to disappear and you have the wrong people being assistant district attorneys, prosecutors in that county or in that state, can decide, and lack of evidence of anything physical happening, can decide to move forward with the case based upon what she was saying and screaming and how she went about that. And I think you have the legal definition of excited utterance.
Well, before I get there, I just want to provide a little bit of context and background to some of the viewers who may not be attorneys. When, in order to, in our endeavor in becoming attorneys, most of us, or almost all of us, took a class in law school called evidence. And one of the major rules of evidence is the hearsay rule, which is defined as an out-of-court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. In plain English, what that means is that if you have an out-of-court statement and it doesn't have a real indicia of reliability, then you have to have the person there in court testifying as to the statement that was made. And that could be, document or oral or otherwise. What we're talking about in this case is an exception to the hearsay rule, which is called the excited utterance exception. And under Article 8, Rule 8.17, the New York rule, it states that an excited utterance is a statement about a startling or exciting event made by a participant in or a person who personally observed the event is admissible, irrespective of whether the declarant, the person making the statement, is available as a witness, provided the statement was made under the stress of nervous excitement resulting from the event and was not the product of studied reflection and possible fabrication. So basically, when you look at the video in this incident, you hear the woman going back and forth with the 911, the person that's on the other line, the 911 hotline, and at some point says, in a high-pitched voice, repeats her allegation. So now we're entering into this excited utterance territory that may possibly, down the line, if this would have turned out differently, allow this case against this African-American gentleman to be prosecuted without the woman making the statement, Amy Cooper, being in court, testifying that that's what she stated or that's what happened. And that could have happened here, quite possibly under this scenario, under this hearsay, this exception to the hearsay rule.
Right. And so taking that in consideration, she could have made herself unavailable, not show up in court. And I understand that that rule may have been in place to protect someone that fears coming to court, but then it could be misused and abused in a prejudicial way, because we're always talking about implementation in our community, enforcement in our community. How is it used in our community to wrongfully prosecute someone? And maybe we can play the tape so we can hear it.
We're gonna go. Her name is Melody Cooper. So
well, Melody Cooper is the sister of Christian Cooper, the African American gentleman.
Got it. Okay.
It's funny how they all have the same last name.
Books. We don't want to go into history books to see if they're relatives, right?
We're not going to go to Ancestry DNA?
That's right. That's right.
No.
Match 23, you want to leave that alone. Somebody's slave quarters somewhere, sometime. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Yeah, all the way.
So Ed, while we're queuing this up and it's loading for our Latino community, I think we're going to need to also just translate what happened. But here we go. She didn't have her dog on leash. That's what started this.
No, and this is an area for bird watching. And there is a sign that says you're supposed to have your dog leashed.
Here we go.
Please don't come close to me. Please don't come close to me. Please call the cops. Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
Excuse me?
And so it's important that Brother Cooper says, you can tell him whatever you like, because he shows his power and that he realizes that it's not about him, it's about her. And that's what we preach.
He's recording me, threatening me and my dog.
He's recording and threatening him.
He's recording me, threatening myself and my dog. I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in Rambo. Please send the cops immediately.
And that's right there is that excited utterance, even though it defies the rule, Ed, because it is a fabrication, but that right there is what we're talking about. And that really...
But if we wouldn't have had the video, all we would have had was the audio, and the prosecutors, the police officers would have said, here, ADA or DA, here's the recording. The ADA would have listened to it and said, well, I think we have an excited utterance here. Even though we haven't been able to secure our cooperation, I think we'll still be able to get this in and have it rendered admissible.
And I would add on to that the ADA would not have probably done their job to the fullest and fail to realize the reason why Cooper is not available is because her ass got fired or was on administrative leave and had to leave the country because her racism was exposed, right? And then you and I are standing in court saying, you didn't go to social media and see that this young lady is now gone, she is fled, and then we got to go through all of that. Money has to be spent, the case has to be thrown out, but it's the process, right? And that's what we're talking about, the process here. And I think it's important that once again, we go back and let's put it in context. This is a racial incident and a fabrication, but there's many people that are going to talk about that, and that's great. But we're going to subtract and absorb the legal from it. The legal from it is that this is an excited utterance, what we discussed before. And if you take it and you place it in a domestic violence scenario where you have someone stating what is occurring at the time in real time, and then that person disappears for whatever reason, fear, new job, doesn't want to be bothered, you can still be prosecuted. And but for there being a video, this could have gone wrong in so many ways. And I said before, I want to congratulate him and acknowledge Mr. Cooper, Brother Cooper, for understanding his own power, realizing that it had nothing to do with him, right? It has nothing to do with him. Take the anxiety, remove it from you, has nothing to do with the way I dress, has nothing to do with who I am as a person, and put it on that person that has the problem, and he did that. And that
the beautiful thing about this incident is that at first the issue was whether anyone was going to be able to identify this woman, and luckily, to a very conscious woman who happens to be white, along with another woman, decided who had worked previously for this woman, walking her dog, recognized her, recognized the dog, and decided, you know what, we can't stay quiet. We have to get out there and let people know who this person is and identify her. And once they did that, that then allowed the wheels to go into motion, where her employer learned of this incident, started an investigation, and terminated her.
And I congratulate those folks, for one, for making a difference, making a call, and intervening. We see intervention so much by social media with the videos. We see it in that way. But here, someone put pen to paper, picked up the phone on the sideline without a lot of fanfare, and did the right thing. And we need more of that. And that's what we preach here. There's ways to intervene when you see these things without becoming a target in and of itself. And this is a prime example of that.
I'm sorry, say it, Doctor.
No, I don't want you to lose your thought there, but I just want to underscore to everybody that's listening, one, that they understand what the excited utterance is, right, when we're talking about the legal. And two, the fact that somebody actually intervened, who was another white woman who understood that this was just wrong. See, it goes beyond race at this point. It's human, like human nature. Like, what kind of person are you to fabricate that? But that's another layer of cultural of why we're here.
We should only hope it goes to human. We should only hope that it goes to human.
True, but it goes to your point.
And speaking of hope, because hope is eternal, right? Now the Human Rights Commission reported that they are starting an investigation on this incident. So now we have this New York City agency, the New York City Human Rights Commission, doing an independent investigation, because normally, for people that don't know, normally the Human Rights Commission basically takes complaints of employment or housing discrimination that is brought by a person who experienced it, or their legal representative, their lawyer, brings that complaint to them, and then they investigate it. Even though they, in statute, they'd have the power to initiate these investigations. And it's wonderful to see this agency with this power and this mission to deal with discrimination in the city of New York actually taking the initiative, and quite possibly, if things turn out a certain way, will possibly file a civil action against Ms. Cooper for what she did.
Wow.
And I think that the fines may, and they have the possibility of pursuing, fines, punitive remedies, injunctive remedies and relief. I believe the statute contains a $125,000 possible remedy fine. We really, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this New York City Human Rights Commission investigation. That doesn't happen every day. I mean, do you agree, Royce?
Well, I agree that it doesn't happen every day. I hope that it's more than just a media stunt, which I don't believe that it is. However, when we talk about having the means to pay the fine, there's no doubt that Sister Cooper has the means to pay the fine in her position and what she's doing, right? All right, so then—
Even though she got fired.
Hey, that severance is long, believe me. Don't believe that she just walked out the door with nothing. Somebody's representing her. And so the least she could have done was been fired. And I commend the ACLU, the entities going after her, and let's hope that something comes out of this, because then maybe it'll be food for thought for the next person. Is, halfway I see on the shirt, explore right here. So let's hope that agencies are exploring other ways to get remedies to stop and prevent the pervasiveness of racism.
And normally the city's corporation counsel, who normally defends the police officers against these lawsuits, right, will be in a position to actually do the right thing and pursue a case of discrimination against someone who clearly committed a discriminatory act.
Well, we'll see how that balances out, because
hope is eternal. Hope is eternal.
Yeah.
Hope is eternal.
And then we'll get that fair.
Hope is internal, and Master P runs the organization. You understand what I'm saying? Have you been to New Orleans? You know what I'm saying? So we'll move on
Ed,
from
I'm
that.
with you.
No,
Look,
but
I'm with Ed on Hope's Eternal.
Ed, look, I understand hope is internal. And I do understand that. And, you know, I understand what it means to have that burning light. I'm a little jaded and beat down. So, you know, my lights are a little dim. And they get dimmer by the moment when I see what happened in Minnesota.
But before we get there, hold on. Before we even get to Minnesota, Ed, I need you to talk about excited utterance for our Latino family so they understand as well what that is. We don't want to leave this point. Once again, it's where the legal meets the cultural. We need to understand how things can happen. Somebody can say something, and maybe there's a brother that doesn't understand English completely and doesn't know what's going down, that the cops are being called on him. So I need you to just wrap that up for us, for our Latin viewing audience, so they too can understand the importance.
De lo que estamos hablando es que hay veces donde una persona llama a la policía y habla con la policía y reporte un crimen, aunque sea de verdad o falso, y usan una voz excitada, con emoción. Eso después le da al fiscal la habilidad para seguir con las cargas en corte sin ese testigo presente, nada más usando la grabación de la voz de esa persona. Y uno tiene que entender eso cuando tiene que ver. Esto muchas veces pasa en casos de violencia doméstica, donde a veces el testigo, la persona que reportó el crimen, no se aparece en corte. Eso no quiere decir que el caso de una vez se va a caer o que el fiscal va a pedirle al juez que vote ese caso o que tu abogado defensor pueda conseguir esa conclusión. Es posible que ese caso siga en corte porque el fiscal va a poder usar la grabación sin el testigo por la voz que se usó y la emoción que se usó durante esa llamada. Eso es una excepción a la regla de evidencia que previenes declaraciones que se hicieron fuera de corte sin el testigo estar presente en corte para decir que sí, eso fue lo que yo dije en ese día, en ese momento. Además queremos, de eso que estamos hablando, y que el video es un ejemplo de eso, cuando tú oyes la emoción que usó la señora durante el tiempo que ella estaba reportando que este señor la estaba amenazando y que le iba a hacer daño. Nada más para la comunidad latina.
Gracias. And that is important for us to make sure that we're giving this information out to all of our community, because something like that could have escalated differently. And Royce is about to jump into our hearts, really looking at what happened in Minneapolis. We're going to, once again, the cultural meets the legal. There's so many pieces of this to talk about. I'm going to pull it up on the screen while you queue up where we're going to begin with what we see once again happen in America.
Well, you know, not playing what is called Harry Reasoner or whoever is the anchor on ABC back in the day, you know, or Lester Holt. I mean, the video speaks for itself. I think what's important, inherently important, is what do we extract from this video that is legal, that can help someone in a situation where they encounter police misconduct or they encounter some excessive force. I commend the governor, the mayor, whoever of Minnesota taking swift action, but it's the only action that they could have taken. And, you know, firing those that were involved was the only action that they could have taken. But one of the things that we want to look at here is not only firing those that were involved physically, is looking at those that were involved by omission, that didn't do anything, that didn't intervene. And I want to introduce this concept called failure to intervene. And it's a concept that I use often when filing civil rights cases, false arrest, police brutality cases, where I cite not only is the bad actor guilty of what they have done, but the person, their partner, the other officers that arrived at the scene, their failure to do something also makes them liable, also makes them a product of the lawsuit under the legal entity or the legal concept of failing to intervene. failing to stop something that you know was wrong or you knew was wrong, failing to intercede in something that was abusive or not in line with the patrol guide, the police patrol guide, whether it's in New York or whether it's in Minnesota. So sometimes non-action is an action in and of itself. And so I want our viewers to understand that this failure to intervene concept can apply for you too. You may not always get the badge number of the person that is abusing your friend or yourself. You might get the badge number or the name of his partner that's on the side. You are not to let that partner off the hook. That partner is involved because they didn't do anything to help you. They didn't stop the bad actor from acting. And so they are involved, and the lieutenant and the desk sergeant and anybody else that processed your case, knowing that the arrest was forced, knowing that excessive force was used and they didn't intervene. And I think that is what is important, among other things that we can take away from this video and the ramifications thereafter.
All right, let's go to the video. And for those who haven't seen it, it's not easy to watch. As a mother of 2 young Black kings, this is beyond disgusting to see again.
Bro, with your feet on his neck, man, you get off the
His nose is bleeding. Like, come on now.
Look
Look at his nose.
You see your knee in his neck. You got your feet right on his neck, bro.
It's interesting that her hands are in her pocket. She thinking nothing of it.
Tough guy. Tough guy. He is tough guy. He not even resisting the rest.
His whole nose.
Oh, but why you sit there? He ain't doing nothing now. Hold down the car.
How long I gotta hold him down?
Why don't you drugs get about drugs, bro? You know that's bogus right now, bro. You know it's bogus. You can't even look at me like a man because you're a bum, bro. He's not even resisting arrest right now,
His
bro.
nose is bleeding.
You stop his breathing right now, bro. You think that's cool? Get off of his neck. Yes, look at that, bro. Are you serious? Bro, are you serious? And you're gonna keep your thing on the neck?
Look at him.
Bro. You're a real man, bro. You're a real man, bro. I'm trying to look at you.
I think you guys are checking his pulse and doing compression if he needs that. You guys are on it.
Oh my God, bro.
Okay.
They just dragging him like, come
Yeah,
on
and
now.
I have your name tag.
So, and if you notice the reckless disregard of even those who arrived to put him on the stretcher in terms of turning him over, despite the fact that this officer just had his entire knee on his neck and quite possibly, you know, could have done some serious injuries to his neck. I mean, this is an egregious incident reminiscent of Eric Garner. You notice that the officer is also, it's also as if he's also trying to prevent the person recording the incident from recording it by standing in the way, more concerned with the civilians than the, you know, than the individual on the floor and what's happening behind him. Where are your priorities?
Well, I think his priorities in the right place. His priorities in the place of self-preservation. He knows that he's doing something wrong. He knows that he's acting, as we call around the way, out of pocket. So I want to make sure everyone doesn't see me acting out of pocket. So I'm gonna block what's going on. And that's what I mean by failure to intervene. The bad actor has his knee on that person's neck. The other officer who is blocking the video from not necessarily being shot, but getting the misconduct is an actor in and of itself. He is a bad actor too. He's the one that you say you failed to intervene. And so he knew what he was doing. The priority was to not get this on film. He doesn't get out. And any of the officers that came that walked around the scene looked very nonchalant. I think at one point, the person that had his knee on his neck had his hand in his pocket, it appeared. All of these things are things that every single one of them should be named in the lawsuit. And that's why the mayor, the governor, whoever in Minnesota had no choice but to fire every single one of them. But I will, and I do have to point out one thing. and you could throw tomatoes at me later, is that when you are videoing, it is best to let the video speak for itself. I get it. You might want to say he's not resisting. One time is fine. You might want to say he's not breathing. 2 times is fine. But imagine if we caught some audio of what was being said amongst the officers, how we caught the deliberate indifference towards human life by what they were saying or not saying. We caught
and I knew you were going to say that, because that's exactly what I was thinking while I was watching this video. I said, oh man, if you guys stop saying things one after the other, maybe I could hear better what he's saying there on the ground to these officers in terms of I can't breathe. I believe he also said, can I get some water and so forth. It's hard to hear because the people that are there and the recorder are constantly making statements in a raised voice. So
well, and there is, that's a good point, Ed, but there is another part of the video. And once again, you talk about it over and over again, Royce. It's in your book about when you're taking the video to be as silent as possible. So like you said, the video can speak. So thank God there is a portion of the video where you hear him screaming out for his mother, where he's saying, I cannot breathe, where he's saying his stomach hurts. Like, you can hear that clearly. So whoever captured that part of the video as well, thank God for you, because there would be difficulty with hearing in this portion of the video all of what he was saying on the ground. And kudos to the first responder that was there, that was also saying, you all are not even checking his pulse. Like, there's enough information that was captured that the Minneapolis chief of police made that distinction. And there are all sorts of images going across the screen today because of the protests that are happening as a result of what we saw. But this is a lesson when we talk about the legal meeting the cultural. When you see some injustice and you're videotaping, we cannot underscore enough. Try to be as quiet as you can so that the attorney, once contacted, has a way to use that tape in fighting for justice for that person. So that's important. And Ed, I think we need to say that in Espanol, once again, for our families, so they understand if you're going to video, what you need to do while in the process.
Lo que estamos diciendo que es importante que cuando uno está grabando estos incidentes, que se queden callados. Tú sabes, nosotros entendemos que con lo que está pasando, uno tal vez va a decir algo, que no hagan eso, déjenlo tranquilo, pero a seguir diciéndolo repetidamente no llegamos a nuestro objetivo. Nuestro objetivo es grabar el incidente para después darles al abogado la evidencia que ellos necesitan para perseguir justicia de parte de la persona agredida. Tú sabes que está sufriendo aquí, y lo que uno oye en este video, que las personas siguen diciendo cosas y uno tiene dificultad oyendo la víctima que está sufriendo, diciendo, mira, no puedo respirar, me duele el estómago, y lo otro que otro individuo pudo grabar, gracias a Dios. Pero es importante que uno mantenga su silencio cuando está grabando estos incidentes.
And not that the NBA, the National Basketball Association, because Stephen Jackson called George Floyd his twin because they looked similar. Not that they have to say anything, but if they are going to say something, I hope that they take it to the next level. We wore shirts before that said "can't breathe," and that was for Brother Gardner. Well, we're going to get a different color shirt this time for Brother Floyd. We have to take the next step. I'm hoping that they take the next step. I'm hoping that they decide that they want to have workshops that discuss this issue. I'm hoping that they buy cardiac arrest. I'm hoping that they engage the NBA in developing a Know Your Rights symposium. Maybe a player or two takes that on as their charity arm, especially in New York, especially in Brooklyn, hint, hint, especially in New York, especially in Chicago, especially in LA. You name it, I can call it. So there can be a voice, a consistent voice throughout, both culturally and legally, that we're attacking this from all angles whatsoever. Not just a Colin Kaepernick or Ed Reed or Michael Bennett or Marcellus Bennett or, you know, a Jim Brown or, you know, every other time, but something that is consistent, something that's going to stay with us over the test of time, because this is ridiculous. And we are not preaching just to preach. We are trying to inform so you know what to do. And I'm sure that the family has proper legal representation. You know, I was wondering why, when I saw the protests, how all the police cars were leaving. You know, something to be said by the inaction by the police, right? The protest is going on.
They backed up.
Bottles are being thrown at them, and they're not engaging. Somebody told them, y'all need to stand down. Y'all need to just let the bottles be thrown, let the venting take place, and just move away. But we still can't let it just be for a day. It has to be prolonged. Let the pen and the paper speak up. And hopefully it'll be more than just termination. Maybe, you know, the commissioner is an elected position now. Maybe we need to change that around so we can vote and empower people that sound like us and have our concerns at hand. You know,
because the sheriff, most sheriffs of most counties, which is a law enforcement position, is an elected position. So I don't see any reason why the police commissioner in many cities isn't an elected position as well.
You know, when I look at this right here, we have this scenario, we're going to see this tape, we see these things, and then quiet after a period of time, because, you know, Americans have very short memories. 3 weeks from now, 2 weeks from now, this will be way, way down as a footnote. Not because we want it to be, but because that's the way it goes, and proceedings will go on. Here in New York, we have a case of the Trawick matter. Just filed it not too long ago, maybe a day ago. This gentleman was killed, you know, in his apartment, unarmed, killed, shot dead. And, you know, the Bronx District Attorney has prolonged their investigation for now almost a year and over a year, and still hasn't made a decision as to whether or not they're going to prosecute. So if New York City can't take the forefront, I wonder about Minnesota. And if Minnesota does take the forefront, then I wonder about our leadership that looks like us, speaks like us, and acts like us, and they haven't done anything.
It's so much, you know, this show, we could go on. I'm going to see if this plays, because this is a part of what's playing out now. So when we see this, right, I'm just gonna pause it, because it's so much. When we talk about the legal meeting the cultural, and people are looking like, oh my goodness, why are they doing that? What's happening in Minneapolis? If we don't stand up, if we don't say something, when will something be done? And this show is helping you to have some recourse, helping you to know what to do when these situations happen. You said it before, Royce, you said it before, Ed. It's not if it will happen. Unfortunately, it's when it will happen. And when it does, what do you do? How can you fight for justice? How can we fight so that his family, I mean, watching the interview with his family and the attorney that they secured with Benjamin Crump, I don't even know how they're able to put words together, because all I can think about, and every other Black mother, grandmother, every other Black brother, father, husband, everybody is just picturing that could be a relative of mine. That could be somebody that I know and love, that for whatever situation or reason, they're in a place and time where someone doesn't value their life enough to be able to prosecute, as I think I heard Reverend Sharpton even say, if he was guilty of something, arrest him and let the due process play out. But why would you have to put a knee on his neck? Because there's no value in the life of a Black man. That is what it is saying. And for people who are confused as to why folks are taking to the street, why social media is going crazy, just think about if that was your family. Think about the fact that what would you do if you were in that situation? And unfortunately, a good portion of the country can't relate, because you didn't have to grow up telling your children how to talk to a police officer when they pull you over, because you live in a community where the cops are friendly with the kids. When the kids do something wrong, it's a slap on the wrist and, hey, Charlie, don't you do that again, you hear? But in our community, you can be shot and killed.
And it's amazing how what starts off as a otherwise non-crime or property offense receives such lethal response. If you recall the Eric Garner case, we were talking about cigarettes. In this case, apparently we were talking about some sort of allegation of a forged $20 bill or a check of some sort, which at the end of the day, you know, is a property offense, if you will, and whether or not you are merited in engaging in such a lethal response. There was actually some video of before this incident of Mr. Floyd, the decedent, may he rest in peace, in his car peaceably, and I didn't really see a struggle in that video. And then later on, he's walked over to the police vehicle across the street, and how the incident took this turn is just amazing and indicative of the lack of respect for the African American community, and you know, it's just quite amazing to watch. And also, this knee on the neck seems to be a familiar scene to me. It's like all you got to do is change the face and maybe the clothes, and you could put somebody else there. I mean, it's familiar to me from the social distancing incident in the village.
Well, I mean, it's always going to be familiar if that's part of their training, right? So I mean, that's something.
But that's also the problem. I read a training manual, not necessarily for the NYPD or Minneapolis PD, but I believe for the officers who have to carry out police duties on behalf of the UN. And apparently that knee is supposed to be applied on the shoulder or on the back, and it clearly states not the neck, because that could, you know, kill the person. And you see this officer with the knee on the neck, like, what are you doing? You know, it's
well, I believe what he's doing is that he's doing what he wants to do because he doesn't have to be held accountable. We have to understand at the end of the day, he loses his job. Maybe he might be prosecuted. Maybe he might go to jail. Quite honestly, what will probably happen is that he receives some type of probation and has to pay some type of fine or has to do something of that nature, because what they're going to say is that it wasn't intentional, it was reckless, and therefore he didn't have the intent. And then we go right back to what we've been talking all along, and I know we're running out of time, so we might have to end with this, is that the accountability piece. If there was a financial piece that was layered on to the accountability piece when it came down to police officers and their actions, we will see different responses, because no one wants to affect their pocket directly. Here, where that is not the case, you might be able to sue them individually. You might be able to do that. But the city, the county, the town, municipality is going to take the brunt of the deep pockets. But if that was proportioned in a way that it hit your pocket, you would act differently. Just like when you're late for work, you get docked, you miss a day, you don't get the pay. The same thing would happen here. And we need to vote for that. We need to, you know, legislate for that. We need to voice for that there should be some financial responsibility for the bad actor.
And you also, and speaking of politics, I think Mayor Frey, Jacob Frey, acted the way he did, and his police commissioner or police chief, if you will, because I would imagine that very large population of color in Minnesota, that's part of his electorate, especially as a mayor who was recently elected. I believe he took office in 2018, so he barely has 2 years in office, if that. And you saw how quickly he acted. And so we talk about electing our district attorneys and making sure that the person we elect as our chief law enforcement officer is someone that identifies with our interests and seeks to prosecute this officer. I want to see what the DA in that county does. I believe it may be Hennepin County or one of those counties there in Minneapolis, and see if they're willing to do their job in the grand jury. I believe that they have preliminary hearings out there, which is a sort of a grand jury proceeding for felonies. But you know, I really am going to be interested in seeing what happens there and the possible power of the electorate there.
Absolutely. And as we wind down the show today, it's so much packed in. I just want to honor George Floyd by saying his name. You know, this is unfortunately yet another name added to the list that we pray stops growing. And the work that you're both doing to be able to litigate these cases, to bring justice, to have some financial punitive damage to those who engage in this unlawful conduct. We salute you for doing it, and we applaud that you've put this work in a book, Royce Russell, so that folks could actually have something and have a tactical guide on how to handle when we get through the emotion of it. What can we do pragmatically? What can we do on the spot with the video, making sure that the attorney can hear, having some sort of communication between people when you're on the road of who to call, how to call, having an attorney that's on speed dial. So you can call Attorney Russell, you can call Attorney Pichardo. In the case that something like this happens, you know what to do. This is where the legal meets the cultural. We want to honor again our ancestors who have left us. We have Jimmy Cobb, Little Richard, Betty Wright, and Andre Harrell, four great individuals that have contributed to our culture. And we unfortunately have to mix that remembrance with such a tragic story. And we will continue to fight for justice. There is no peace until we can get to a point where we really can say that justice is equal for everyone. And we're not at that point yet. So as we close out, how can everyone get in contact with you as you give your closing remarks for today? Once again, let everybody know how they can contact you, and keep both of you in mind if and when something like this happens on their watch.
Well, at Pichardo, I can be contacted at 718-514-9099, 718-514-9099, or at edp@lawofficeofedwardpichardo.com. And just a closing comment, maybe on the next episode, which we kind of maybe didn't mention, is that the law enforcement officials in Minneapolis have contacted the federal government to do an FBI investigation. I don't know where that's going to go under this Trump administration, but you know, I would love it if we could talk a little bit about that on the next show, Royce.
Well, we are servants to the news, so whatever floats in the news, we will definitely jump on. For those who are trying to contact me, you can reach me at 718-785-8890. That's 718-785-8890. You can always visit the website at www.roycerussellesq.com. Look for us on Facebook. Look for us on Instagram. We're here to serve. Take care and be well.
Thank you. And I'm closing out with these three faces. This is the most recent. Today, of course, we're talking about George, but we haven't forgotten about Ahmaud Arbery or Breonna Taylor. So let's keep pushing for justice. Let's keep sharing this information. Where speaking legally is where the legal meets the cultural. And we appreciate you being here. Share this with someone. We'll be back again, same time, same place next week, 4 p.m. It's Dr. Stacy signing off. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Royce. Bye-bye, everyone.
Take care. Be well.